All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on computer science. We're going to look right past all the code you see on the screen and dig into the invisible foundation that really makes our entire digital world possible. So, when you think about computer science, what pops into your head? Probably something like this, right? A programmer, fingers just flying across the keyboard, lines of really cryptic looking code scrolling by. It's the classic Hollywood image. But what if I told you that's not the real story at all? See that frantic typing? That's just the tip of the iceberg. It's the very last step in a long and frankly fascinating process. The real work, the actual science in computer science, that happens long before anyone writes a single line of code. It's a story all about logic, mathematics, and just pure abstract thought. So to really get this deeper story, we first have to make sure we're all speaking the same language. Because in the world of computing, what we see on the surface, well, it isn't always what it seems. You've probably heard people use the words coding and programming like they're the same thing, but there's a really key difference. Coding is the mechanical act of translating logic into a language a computer gets, like Python or Java. But programming is the whole puzzle. It's the high-level problem-solving, planning out the structure, thinking about scale, and then, only then, using coding to make that plan happen. You could say coding is the craft, but programming is the architecture. And here's where it gets really wild. The foundations for all of this digital architecture, they were laid decades before we even had modern computers. These ideas weren't born from hardware. They came from pure thought. I love this quote from the National Research Council because it just hits the nail on the head. The real power of computer science comes from its theoretical roots, this invisible, intangible cornerstone made of pure ideas. This is the bedrock that everything else is built on. And this timeline just proves the point. Look at this. 1936, Alan Turing comes up with his theoretical Turing machine, a universal model for what computation even is, before a general-purpose computer was ever built. Then, in 1948, you get Claude Shannon laying out information theory. You see, the concepts came first. The hardware followed way later. The pioneers here were mathematicians and logisticians. So, what are these foundational ideas? Well, one of the most basic is the state machine. It sounds complicated, but it's a super simple, powerful concept. A system can only be in a limited number of states. An input makes it move from one state to another. A telephone is the perfect example, right? It's idle, you lift the handset, it moves to the dial tone state. You press a number, it enters the dialing state. This simple model is the basis for, well, everything from your web browser to the protocols that run the internet. Okay, so that's one pillar. Here's another huge one, computational complexity. This isn't about whether a problem can be solved, it's about how hard it is to solve. As a problem gets bigger, say finding the shortest route to visit 10 cities versus 10,000 cities, how much more time and memory is the computer going to need? Understanding this tells us which problems are easy for a computer and which ones are just fundamentally incredibly hard. And this is the real kicker. These abstract theories, state machines, complexity, all that stuff, they aren't just for academics in an ivory tower. They are so deeply embedded in our technology that we use them without even thinking about it. They're literally the invisible engine humming away behind our digital world. All right, so we've got this amazing theoretical cornerstone in place. But how do you actually build anything on it? You need a bridge, something to connect the abstract logic in our minds to the physical circuits in the machine. We needed languages. In the very beginning, programmers had to speak the computer's native language, machine language. And let me tell you, it was a nightmare. Just a mind-numbing sea of zeros and ones. So the solution was the invention of high-level languages, which use words and symbols that we humans can actually understand. They act like a brilliant translator, letting us write instructions logically, and then having a program called a compiler do the tedious job of turning it into all those ones and zeros. And the push for these new languages, it often came from very practical needs. The absolute legend Grace Hopper, she realized that business users were not interested in complex math formulas. They just needed to process payroll and manage inventory. This simple insight led her to develop a language based on simple English words, which directly inspired COBOL, one of the most important business languages in history. And once that dam broke, it was like an explosion of new languages. Different languages popped up to do different jobs. You had Fortran for scientific number crunching, COBOL for business, C for writing the guts of operating systems. and eventually general-purpose languages like Python that can kind of do a bit of everything. Each language is just a specialized tool, but they're all built on that exact same theoretical foundation. So, we have the theoretical cornerstone and we have the languages to build with. What have we actually created? The answer, of course, is, well, everything around us. I mean, seriously, just think about your day. Every time you unlock your phone, stream a movie on Netflix, check your bank account, or see some wild scientific simulation, you are interacting with massive, complex structures built from these tools. From the operating system running your device to the global networks that connect all of us, it's all just layers upon layers of code, all resting on that intangible cornerstone of theory. And if you want a perfect example that ties this all together, look no further than your online shopping cart. When you buy something, the security of that transaction, that little padlock icon in your browser, it relies on something called public key cryptography. And that cryptography is built on a very, very hard problem from number theory, the incredible difficulty of factoring the product of two enormous prime numbers, a daily convenience made possible by deep, abstract mathematics. It's amazing. Okay, to wrap this all up, let's shift our focus a little bit. Let's not talk about the technology itself for a minute, but instead about what building it teaches us about how we think. Because at the end of the day, learning computer science isn't just about memorizing Python commands. It's about developing a whole new mental toolkit, a structured, logical way of approaching problems that has value far, far beyond the keyboard. It's what people call computational thinking. And what is that really? Well, it's about learning to take a big, messy problem and decompose it, break it down into small, manageable parts. It's about looking for patterns. It's about designing a clear, step-by-step recipe, an algorithm, to solve each little part. And then it's about building abstractions to hide all the messy details so you can focus on the big picture. It's really just a powerful framework for clear thinking. So the next time you see that code scrolling on a screen, remember the invisible cornerstone sitting right underneath it all. The journey from pure mathematical logic to the device in your hand is honestly one of the greatest intellectual achievements in human history. And it forces us to ask a really profound question. In teaching a machine to think logically, what have we ultimately learned about ourselves?